The clock here hums like a tired bee, and sometimes I pretend it's a hive and I am the old queen with a crown made of bent bobby pins, ruling two rooms and a window that looks onto the parking lot. The night nurse walks by with slippers that whisper on linoleum, and the TV down the hall mutters to itself. Chase scenes, commercials for pills that promise to rewind time. My hands keep their own counsel. They lie in my lap, veined and speckled like the eggs we used to collect from the coop. I tell them, hush, we'll get to it. We always do. I keep a jar of buttons on the sill, not because I sew anymore, I can barely thread a needle, but because the light catches them at sunrise and scatters small, brave rainbows across the wall over my bed. In the morning, those rainbows walk the room like grandchildren who know not to ask for anything yet. When the sun is out, the colors climb over the photographs and bless what's left of my life. When the clouds come, they hide, and that feels honest too. You want the beginning, don't you? People always do. They think beginnings explain everything, but soil knows better. You can turn it over and over. What grew before is still inside, ground to memory. My beginning is a field I walked barefoot when I was a girl, the grass still wet from dawn, the air tasting like tin and mint. My mother kept a tin pail for milk and another for stories, and on certain evenings, she'd dip into the second one and ladle out a tale. She told me that strength is the year you let the ground rest, that you can't plant the same hunger in the same patch forever. She didn't say it like that. She said, lay down sometimes, Lena. Let the earth breathe through you. I didn't understand until much later when my heart learned how to pant. I had a house once with windows on three sides and a porch that knew the exact sound of my husband's boots. He was a steady man, sugar in the coffee, never too much, never too little. We had one son, my Jacob, with a birthmark on his shoulder shaped like a comma, as if the Lord had paused mid-sentence when he made him. I swore I'd give him every season, spring for blooming, summer for muscle, autumn for schooling, and winter for the quiet that teaches a boy how to listen. I did my best. Mothers always say that, and sometimes it's true. The kitchen had a dent in the hardwood where he learned to dance on my shoes. I can still hear his laugh bouncing off the cabinets like sunlight playing tag with the spoons. In that house, we rotated our days the way farmers rotate crops: work, play, prayer, rest. On Sundays, the ground of us lay fallow. We ate slow, napped hard, and pretended we weren't worried about anything. When trouble came, we fed it soup and told it to sit on the steps until it could speak politely. There was a year when the money thinned like watery stew, and I learned how to stretch everything: time, turkey, patience. When the roof leaked, I put pots under the drips and made a symphony out of planks. My husband brought home a secondhand plow for the yard, a foolish purchase. We didn't own enough earth to justify it, but he needed to lay a straight furrow somewhere, and the machine gave him that. It carved a line as if it were a sentence we might live inside. Like, hold on, keep going. We did. I tell you this not to gather pity. I am old. Pity is a coat too heavy for me now. I tell you so you understand the shape of love before it changed. It didn't vanish all at once like a coin slipped into a pocket. It shifted, lumbering slow, the way a river remembers a new course. When my husband died, the house tried to swallow me. It took the voice of the front door, which used to creak hello. It took the smell of sawdust left in the laundry room like breadcrumbs. Grief. What a stubborn plow that is. It cuts deep and won't ask before it turns the earth of you. Jacob moved back in to help for a while. The kind of while that stretches and sours. He mowed the lawn, changed light bulbs, left his boots in the hall like punctuation marks that I had to step around. He promised we'd keep the place. He said, Ma, we'll make it easier for you. And I believed him because a mother never retires from believing. But even good sons are men in the world, and the world whispers deals to them the way wind talks to the tallest wheat. He had a new wife then, with hair that looked like a magazine page and a mouth always calculating. She rearranged my pantry, moved the flour to where the sugar lived, insisted on glass jars because aesthetics. She called me Lena as if we were equals. We were not. And the betrayal wasn't dramatic. It didn't come with thunder. It came in envelopes. Papers slid under my nose like snakes sunning themselves. transfers and authorizations, things that to simplify. I signed the first because it was Jacob's hand guiding mine. I signed the second because he said it was just for tax. I didn't sign the third. I said, "Now, tell me what I lose." He said, "Nothing. It's all still yours." He smiled the way you smile at the old woman who doesn't understand banking apps. I have outlived so much, I thought. Surely I can outlive my own doubt. I was wrong. The day I learned the deed had changed its last name, I was carrying in the groceries, a paper bag tearing in my hands, oranges rolling across the porch like bright birds. A neighbor girl came panting up the steps with mail, her cheeks shiny with sweat. She handed me a notice with more legal words than breath. The house, my house, was to be prepared for sale. My son stood in the kitchen, checking something on his phone. "It's just a better arrangement, Ma," he said, eyes not meeting mine. Just better arrangement. Three words like dull knives. They splintered the cutting board where I had sliced bread for him 1,000 times. I didn't scream. I have never been a screamer. I set the bag down and picked up each orange one by one as if fruit could teach me how to gather my dignity. The porch was warm under my knees. The wood had memorized all our afternoons. My son watched me collect what I could. When I stood, I met his eyes, and the silence between us was a room no window could air out. "Why?" I said, not like a child, but like a widow who has buried too many lies. "It's complicated," he said. Of course it was. People use complicated when they mean I chose wrong and can't admit it. The nursing home appeared on a Tuesday. That's how I think of it, as if a building sprouted out of thin air like a mushroom after rain. There were brochures with smiling people playing cards and a schedule of chair exercises. There was a tour where everyone seemed to be counting something invisible. My son told me it would be easier, that I would make friends, that they can help you more than I can. He used the word safe so many times it lost its shape. I packed a suitcase the way I've packed grief, folding what still fit, letting the rest fall. In the back of my closet, I found the recipe cards with flower fingerprints, the ones I copied for him and he never took. I slipped them under my sweaters. A woman should always carry two things when leaving her life: the map and the salt. The first night here, I lay awake cataloging the sounds: the elevator's throat clearing, the far off clink of a glass, the cough of a man who has smoked since 1952, the gentle argument of crickets outside the utility shed. I thought, this is a field I didn't choose, but I can still plant something. I have done it before. I can do it again. Silent strength, they call it, as if noise would make it heavier. Mine is not a statue, it is a muscle. It remembers work. In the mornings, I stole cuttings from the spider plant in the hall and coaxed them into glass jars on my sill. The nurse with the soft eyes brought me soil in a paper cup, and I bought packets of seeds with the money I kept folded behind St. Jude in my wallet. The first sprout was so small I needed to tilt it toward the light with a toothpick. I whispered to it, not words exactly, breath. If you've ever held a baby bird, you know the language. Here is where the revenge comes in, if you can call it that. Not anger blooming like a bruise, something finer. I wrote letters, slow letters with crooked lines, to people I'd cooked for, babysat, drove to church, sent casseroles to when their mothers died. I told them the truth without seasoning. Jacob sold the house. I am safe, but I am not home. I asked for recipes in return. I asked for stories. How did you survive what you survived? Most people wrote back. They tucked memories into envelopes like folded quilts. I made a book out of them with my own notes in the margins. I donated it to the little library in the lobby with a handwritten sign: "Borrow me and write in me." My son will never understand what I took from him and gave away. He thought the deed was everything. He forgot memory is real estate too, and I know every inch of it. One afternoon, my granddaughter came to visit with a braid crooked as a question mark. She sat on the edge of my bed and looked at me with eyes that weren't rehearsed. She asked, "Did Dad hurt you?" Children who can see through doors always ask the right question. I told her, "He hurt himself first." She cried a little, and then she asked what we could do that wasn't crying. I said, "We can cook." We smuggled an electric skillet into the common room and made potato pancakes for anyone who came to watch the weather. We fried them until the edges sang. The room filled with the smell of home, that brave union of onion and oil. People lined up with paper plates and stories. We created a line of hunger and kindness, the most honest line there is. Word got around, and soon Wednesday nights became ours. The staff pretended not to notice the extension cord. The administrator pretended not to count the fire hazards. My son heard about it from someone's wife at church and called to tell me it was dangerous. I told him, "So is forgetting who you are." I am not innocent. That belongs to the young and the dead. I had a hand in making my son. I taught him how to cut corners on pie crust and how to get out of trouble with charm. I taught him that doors open if you push politely and then a bit more. Perhaps I taught him to love convenience the way I loved a tidy sink. Too much, too often. That is my accounting. I leave it open to the light. In this home, the seasons still turn. In spring, the maintenance man drags planters onto the terrace, and we kneel to tuck marigolds around tomatoes, companions, the nurse reminds me, like good neighbors who stand watch for termites of the spirit. In summer, the air grows heavy as a hand on the back of your neck. In fall, we draw closer to the windows, our breath making brief ghosts on the glass. In winter, the world narrows to the visible and the warm. Sometimes in the afternoon, a storm will gather, sly at first, then full-throated. The sky wears a bruise. The residents press their foreheads to the panes the way believers press them to holy stones. I know rain by its back. I can tell you when it will arrive by the ache in my knuckles and the way the sparrows sit low on the fence. That kind of knowing doesn't leave you. It plants itself and comes back each year. It is the grandmother of all my small victory gardens. Do you want a confession? I used to imagine revenge as a courtroom where I would stand brave as a fence post and list my son's every small cruelty. I would speak like thunder and he would shrink like a weed in vinegar. In the fantasy, everyone would applaud truth and I would go home. Instead, forgiveness arrived barefoot and asked for bread. It had a scar on its lip and didn't look me in the eye. It said, "You can carry me or I can carry you." We made a deal. I would not excuse him, and I would not be devoured by him either. I would wait for the season that allowed planting again. Then the call came. It was late, the hallway long, with the sound of a cart's rattling wheel. His wife had left, the pretty one with the jars. She took the car with the seat warmers and the set of knives I brought them as a wedding gift. He was in his kitchen, which used to be my kitchen, with a dent in the floor where a small boy danced on his mother's toes, and he was alone. He said, "Ma," small as a seed. I could taste iron in my mouth, that old flavor of taking a breath before lifting more than you should. I said, "I'm here." He said he needed help. I told him to bring me 2 eggs and a sack of flour and meet me by the back entrance before visiting hours. He did. We cooked on a folding table near the vending machines while the night nurse kept watch. I watched his hands crack the eggs, and I saw the boy he'd been, the one with the comma on his shoulder. We made bread the way grief makes bread, slow, with pauses for what you cannot say. Knead until the dough refuses your fingers, and then remember it is your son you are holding. We ate in quiet, sharing butter from little foil-topped squares. That was my revenge, to make him taste what he threw away and to make him admit out loud between chews that it was good. He cried into his palm and spoke in wet fits, apologies that tripped on one another, explanations like thin broth, his voice frayed. I sat and let the words happen, the way you let summer storms finish themselves before you open the door. I didn't absolve him, I didn't curse him. I said, "You hurt me." He said, "I know." I said, "You will spend years learning exactly how." He nodded, and there it was. The beginning of redemption looks like a man not looking away. People think redemption is a ceremony with candles and music that swells on cue. It's not. It's a series of small chores you don't want to do. It's calling your mother every week, even when shame is hot and tedious. It's driving her to the optometrist and then to the diner and feeding the parking meter without sighing. It's paying back what isn't money. He started to do those chores. He even asked about transferring the deed back, and I told him to stop chasing paper and start planting time. "Grow me something I can see," I said. He laughed, a short, surprised sound like a blue jay's. He did not become a saint. I did not become a fool who forgets. We met in the muddy middle where things sprout. He began to repair. He patched the screen door at my old house for the new owner, who lets me visit sometimes and sit on the porch like an old tree who's been given the honor of shade. He tended the rosemary bush by the steps, trimming away the dead, breathing the scent in like a prayer. He asked if I wanted to move back in with him. I told him my roots had found the shape of this place, and the jar of buttons had trained the light to find me here. So we built something between us, not the house. Too many ghosts have the keys to that, but a trellis maybe for whatever insists on climbing. On Wednesdays, he comes and peels potatoes for the pancakes while my granddaughter shreds them into ribbons and squeezes the water out with wrists stronger than mine ever were. He stands behind the table and asks the veterans about their fishing days, and he listens, really listens, as if he could salt his own wound shut with their stories. When he walks me back to my room, he sees the button rainbows wandering the wall and says, "They're still here." I say, "So are we." That's enough on most days. On most days, enough is a banquet. When I cannot sleep, I walk the hall in my mind and visit everyone's doors the way we used to visit our neighbors' porches in summer dusk, carrying pie and secrets. I picture the woman down the way who braids ribbons through her cardigan and says her husband comes in dreams to remind her where the good knives are. I picture the man with the cough who wears his war on his wrist in the way he turns doorknobs carefully. We are a city of soft lamps and careful feet, a field left to rest, and somehow that is the bravest thing. I keep a little book under my pillow, the one made of recipes and returned stories. I add to it with a pencil that smudges my fingers gray like newsprint. The pages are crowded now, margins speaking to margins. My granddaughter wrote in it last week, "Things we save can save us." She is young enough to think that is new and old enough to be right. Sometimes the wind lifts the smell of someone's perfume, and for a moment I am at my own sink, rinsing cherries, my husband coming up the walk, humming. Sometimes the rain hits the glass, and I'm under the eaves of our house, counting lightning between the claps. The boy beside me in pajamas pointing at the sky and naming shapes inside the clouds as if he could summon better weather with language. Sometimes it's just me and the buttons and the hum of the old bee clock, and I hear the field of my youth telling me that every harvest is a bargain. What you plant, what you leave alone, what you let die, you do not get one without the others. So I sit with my hands in my lap and I forgive them everything they can't lift anymore. I bless the strength that learned to be quiet without becoming small. I bless the anger that didn't rot but turned to compost and fed the basil on the sill. I bless my son, the difficult crop that finally took after a late rain. I bless the house that left me and still keeps me in its bones, the dent in the floor marking our dance like initials carved in bark. I bless the way the past returns not to punish, but to whisper instructions I can finally follow. Rotate your pain, irrigate your joy, tend your companions, watch the weather, save your best seeds, and when the pests come, because they always do, invite the birds and hold your ground. And when the rainbow buttons throw their color across the wall at dawn, and I can almost taste the sugar my husband used to stir into the coffee, I touch the jar and feel the cool glass and think, oh, there you are, world. I'm still here too. I'm older than my anger and younger than my forgiveness. I'm the sum of what I have planted and what I have spared. I'm the quiet field at the edge of town at evening, lying fallow, gathering back its breath, while the last swallows write the sky with their swift, dark pens. If you stand very still, you can hear it, a soft rustle, like a dress brushing past a doorway. There, that's time, making room.